Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Susan Lindner, your host of Innovation Storytellers. Today's going to be a great show. It's rare that I have two guests on at once, but I just felt like it was absolutely imperative that you hear from both sides of the story on how AI implementation is really happening in the real world today. It's why I'm really excited to have two incredible business people on this conversation. First, let me introduce you to Mike Gadsby. He is the co-founder and chief innovation officer O3XO and is co-founder of O3, where he helps leadership teams turn AI and digital strategy into real measurable business outcomes. He has more than 20 years of experience in partnering with complex organizations where he focuses on practical implementation, fast proof of value, and building adoption into the work so initiatives actually stick. He's also the co-founder of 1682, a business of innovation conference, bringing together business leaders to explore how AI is reshaping profit, process, and competitive advantage. The conference is hosted annually at the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia. I highly recommend that you check it out. And we're also joined by a phenomenal business leader, Brett Norton, who is the president and visionary of Buffalo Construction, a $300 million commercial construction management firm based in Louisville, Kentucky, where they're serving clients nationwide. Since joining in 2003, he's helped grow Buffalo from a 25-person restaurant-focused contractor into a 160-plus person team with a multi-sector organization that's developing its proprietary herd build cycle to align culture, process, and execution at scale. He leads with a dual focus on long-term strategy and field execution, grounded in the belief that culture drives performance and leadership exists to support the people doing the work. His experience spans estimating, project execution, pre-construction, and operations, that's shaping accountability-driven approach to building durable organizations through multiple cycles of growth and disruption. God knows we're feeling it now. Today, he is focused on preparing Buffalo for its next generation of integrating tech, developing leaders from within, and advancing toward employee ownership. I'm so excited to have both of you on this call today because, frankly, we're hearing so much, I'm going to say it, BS around AI, and we're not hearing about real practical implementation and execution of AI that's really changing the way we work. We're hearing about a lot of layoffs. We're hearing about a lot of restructuring. But what was so fascinating to me about your story is this creative mechanism of the two of you coming together to figuring out how can we do things differently in a way that changes how we work permanently. And so I want to dive in. Mike, I'm going to ask you first. Tell me how you embarked on this process, how you got here. And then Brett, I'm going to ask you to follow in to tell us your story as well. And then we'll talk about how the chocolate and the peanut butter came together.
Oh man, the chocolate and the peanut butter. It's the best. That's the best combo.
We're talking Reese's
Uh,
Cups now.
that's
By the
right.
way, that analogy does not work in other parts of the world. By the way, they're like, ew, that's disgusting. Why
Oh,
would
yeah,
you
that's
eat
the
that?
best.
It goes
And
straight
no,
to my
thank
heart.
you.
Yeah, it's,
That's
yeah.
it's bread and butter everywhere else, by the way, or rice and soy sauce. So you know.
There you go. There you go. Well, thanks, Susan. And thank you for having us on. And hey, Brett, good to see you. Yeah, just some background about us. My company O3 has been around 20 plus years. We've been in and around, I would say, innovation and specifically digital innovation throughout that time. Our roots are in design and development. I mean, we've just grown up building things. I like to say we started, before the iPhone came out and when Google was a wee baby. So we've seen it all really kind of across that, the years. I would say, roughly 2010, 2011 is when we really started to get into SaaS and started to really get into product development with companies. And that really sort of was anchored by more of a strategic approach to the work we're doing and really helping businesses solve problems. And I think that's really been the core of everything that we've done, is really getting to the root of an issue and then using the digital space to really help solve that. Fast forward a few years, we started to get into innovation as a practice. That really was built around, hey, we either want to be working with innovation groups, entrepreneurial programs, accelerators, or startups themselves and helping them understand a space and then rapidly build a business around it, again, through the digital channel. What's interesting about that is everything we do is human centered. You sort of brought it up initially. I mean, I think there's, especially of all the fast paced AI conversations that are happening right now, I think people are forgetting the fact that like it's people and problems that we're really addressing with all of this. This isn't a matter of technology for technology's sake. So I think that's really been at the root of a lot of what we've always considered to be at the heart of innovation and innovation practice is making sure that we are human centered, that we are looking at the people and problems and spaces that we are trying to affect and impact in a positive way. Fast forward a few years, last couple of years, we branched out and kind of what you've been seeing a lot with innovation programs is a lot of that energy and those dollars, quite frankly, have gone towards AI. Once ChatGPT hit the market, I think everyone's seen the wave and the hype and kind of what's happening there. So we shifted gears and really started helping companies figure out what their AI plan was, and that's when we spun off O3XO as a as our AI practice, and really that was about all right, how do we take all of this, best of practice work we do around innovation and apply it to AI? Still hunting for problems and issues and friction that people experience, whether that's a customer experience or employee experience, but the things that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, still focused in that area, but really looking at, okay, how does AI really create a better solution, a better environment for people to grow and thrive? And that's really, we saw a huge opportunity just to get pretty laser focused on that. We still have our core business and doing the design development and strategy work in the digital experience side, but really XO was our opportunity really to focus specifically on AI. You brought up 1682. Going back to sort of the people component of this. I mean, one of the things that we find to be really important, and particularly in innovation, and particularly in the world of AI right now, when you see so many fast-paced ideas, is it's hard to keep up, right? Many years ago, we had a conference for a while called Forge, which was all about product development. That evolved in 2019 into 1682. For those of you who don't know, we are Philly based. 1682 is the year that Philadelphia was founded. But we looked at that as a really good opportunity to bring business leaders together around the concept of innovation. Again, that evolved around AI in the last couple of years, and we shifted gears. And now we're on our, I believe, fifth major conference that we're going to be hosting this October 7th here in Philadelphia. And we're super excited about it. But the whole point of that is, just let's get these ideas out there. Let's get people sharing what they know. What are the practicalities of living this AI world, whether you're looking at it internally as a business leader, practically as a practitioner, or even from a consulting perspective as we do? What are the things we see and know, and how can we learn from one another?
Yeah, that in-person connection, especially when the sands are constantly changing. I feel like we're finally getting the promise of Gilligan's Island quicksand, like coming back to us. Didn't it feel like growing up in the 70s, quicksand was going to be everywhere? I think it's just the shifting sands of AI beneath our feet is what we're actually feeling.
I
Now,
love the people there.
Brett, tell us a little bit how you got your start. I mean, I introduced you, but not everybody starts off as a construction CEO from jump. How did you get here?
Absolutely. And, I've got a really, really atypical path because I wasn't even supposed to be in this seat. My path started out with history, political science, criminal justice, and was headed a completely different route. And, one thing I always knew I enjoyed was solving very complex problems. And so that segued into construction really, really well. But
Mm,
Buffalo Construction was founded in 1997. And, one thing that I think immediately jumps out that pairs our organization with O3 and Mike so well is, we're also people focused. And I think regardless of what your widget is, we're all in the people business, and it's tools that enable and empower our people. And so we are a construction management company, and we service the entire United States. We're licensed in 48 states, and that makes us a little bit unique as a general contractor. Our relationships are scattered throughout the country. The building codes that we operate in from area to area, are vastly unique from each other. So to your point from earlier, we often find ourselves in tumultuous times, either in the market or the complexity of what we're building. But Buffalo Construction, we're really centered on building better. And building better what? Building better relationships is our key focus. And we consider those relationships successful when both our people and our projects are thriving. And we have done that countless times over 30 years with our client partners, and we don't have subcontractors, we have vendor partners. And those vendor partners have deep relationships with us over the years. We typically operate in a restaurant hospitality space, a multifamily space, a retail space. I tell people, if you eat there, sleep there, shop there, or take an appointment there, chances are the herd is building something very similar to that. So our culture is really, really important to us. And one of our core values is continuous improvement. So I'm just thrilled to be in the conversation today with you, Susan and Mike, because I consider you guys as peers and leaders and mentors in this space that just allow organizations like Buffalo to blossom across the board.
I want to talk about this blossoming because, I feel like the way that you both came together, everyone is talking about AI, right? I
Yes.
spoke at maybe 7 innovation conferences last year, and the notice to chief innovation officers around the world was, if you're not owning the AI budget, you probably are not going to be innovating anything else. So figure out how to manage that. Otherwise, you're going to be out the door. And I feel like that is the subtle and not so subtle message that every business around the world is getting today. So I want to talk about this collaboration between the two of you because I was very impressed with it. So based on the conversations we had, and I'm going to, Mike, let you take it from here, but I was really interested in how you really started this discussion off. And from my understanding, you started off with this strategy plus activation opportunity, right? Workshops, maturity assessments, tech audits, use case prioritization, right? You really started to get into the nitty gritty of how are we going to do this before you started thinking about how we're going to roll it out, right? It was like, we need to get educated, clear, strategically oriented before we just dive into what happened at my 27-year-old son's company, which was everybody gets a Copilot account.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
right.
You have a cobot coworker. Figure
Yeah,
out how to work together, report back to your manager, create a strategy, and then we'll review.
yeah.
My 27-year-old is running strategy apparently for this pre-IPO tech company that he's working at. So you guys took a different approach. Very happy about that. Mike, can you tell us, walk us through how it happened for those of us who are like, how would I even start on my AI journey? How does this work?
It's funny because there was a lot of tactical stuff baked in there, but let me just start with the who. I do think the people that you sort of bring together is really probably the most important part when we start talking about AI activation, adoption, like Brett says, adaption or adaptation, right? And I think that's a really good way of sort of thinking about it as well. From my perspective, the first thing we do before we do anything is try to get a sense of who we're dealing with first and foremost. So, what are the business objectives of the organization? What is the sort of guiding principles of that company? Where are they trying to be in 2 to 3 years? Like all of that is critical because your AI plan is only going to serve your business outcomes or should only really serve your business outcomes. So that's a key part. And that's really where we start. What are the goals of the organization and what are you trying to achieve? Then it gets down into all right, now we need to understand the people who are effectively going to make change within that company. And so when we bring a group of people together, we aren't just focusing on senior leadership. They are a part of the conversation, but we are looking for essentially the folks who are running those departments, who live the problems day in and day out, who understand the friction points inside and out so that we can create a sort of collective wisdom amongst them around all right, where can we really begin to solve some problems that are going to make meaningful impact? It's fine that a company can come in and say, hey, we want to see, 30%, efficiency improvements or, save so many dollars in man hours, right? Like those are all things a business can say, but you can't actually solve those problems until you get close to the individuals who are actually living the issues. So that's the first thing we do is we just bring the right group of people together in order to do that. Then it's a matter of a lot of the same practices that we had in place around innovation are the same sort of tactics that we put in place, right? We want to understand people, process, technology, right? We want to understand the friction points that exist between customers and the business, the friction points that exist in those employees doing their job on a day-to-day basis. We want to understand the technologies that are already in place. our big sort of philosophy around this is, I don't really want to tell somebody to go invest in new technology if they already have invested in all of this tech stack over the years that they are pretty committed to. There's likely some things in there that they can take advantage of. We talk about building bridges between that technology with AI. But then a lot of it really then comes down to process. How are you getting through, in Brett and Buffalo's case, the estimation process, or the RFP process, or the construction process? And then how are you tracking everything from projects and vendors to, the hours at the close of a project, right? So those are all the things that we bring together. And our workshopping is really built around understanding those journeys, really understanding where the pain points lie, and then very specifically getting to the places where we're going to make, again, meaningful impact, and then tying both quantitative and qualitative metrics to it. All right, well, and we'll talk about this with estimation, but with estimation, it was a matter of, all right, how do we get through a 1,500-page RFP much faster? How do we ask questions of it much faster, so that not just so that we can, get through the estimation process faster, but so hopefully we can get through more estimates over the course of the year, right? So that we can produce more proposals, so that Buffalo itself has more capacity to do more business. And that's really what that workshop is all about. I would say the side result of all of that, though, that sort of comes of all of this, is the fact that you're also getting people together to talk about this stuff, to understand these things, so that, because we say it all the time, people are generally, especially in this day and age, too busy to be less busy, right? I think where you start to solve those problems is by having them kind of talk about the issues, really get into the weeds on the problems, and then work together to create a solution. And in our world, we're bringing those AI solutions to the table. We're giving them a little bit of a sense of kind of what's possible, but it's really as a collective that we're determining how is the best path forward in order to solve the specific problem of the organization.
So, Brett, when you and Mike first started talking together, what was the challenge that you were really hoping to address, or the
Oh,
opportunity you were hoping to address?
absolutely.
Yeah.
We had a huge challenge because, very much like your son, we
Mhm.
were AI enabled, or so we thought. We had to log in and we could write some great poems and some teammate recognition and a few emails. So I would say, we were maybe AI curious, but we were not AI aware. We
Yeah,
didn't
limericks, by the
understand.
way, also very powerful limericks. That's all I'm going to say about that. But go ahead, Brett.
Absolutely. So, but that awareness of how do we connect the tool and the resource we have to an actual problem? Sometimes we couldn't even define our problem well enough to know how to apply the tool. So, that was the initial hurdle for us. We are very innovative as a business. I started my career carrying blueprints under my arm on an airplane, and got tired of carrying 60 pounds of drawings to New Mexico. So, we had to figure out different ways to approach our business. So I'm seeing that type of innovation and iteration happen again. So as Mike said, we've got challenges in our estimating team around, how do we process, understand, and be more insightful and intelligent about our approach, because that is where we create our differentiation to our competitor. We all get the same documents. It's what do you do with it after that? This workshop process that creates the awareness and attaches our tools to the problem with the right guide and mentor to get us there, that is what the workshop did for us, that got us over the hill, got people on board and excited. And wow, just to watch it snowball from there. We didn't have to convince anybody that, hey, this was a great opportunity moving forward. We had people beating the door down to jump on the train with us.
So tell us about the AI council that you put together as well. How does that function?
Yes, it was a wonderful recommendation. Again, O3XO has been an amazing guide through this, but bringing the right people together. I think Mike mentioned that it's not just a group of leaders saying, "Oh, here, I'm going to bestow on you an AI login. Now go." But these are the people that are closest connected to the problem. So when you're trying to figure out how to solve it in the most efficient way, enabling our people to be, more powerful, more efficient, more effective, more fun, they're the right people to have in the room. They're the right voices to interview and ask the questions for. We all know our outcomes, but you go to the right people and they know how to get the blocks put together in between where we're at and where we want to be.
Yeah. So, but AI is not all roses and sunshine. I've had too many guests
No.
on the show talk about like the absolute we're about to go off a cliff, or how much more money are we going to spend on this before we start seeing results, kind of thing. So tell us about some of the road bumps the speed bumps that you found along the way.
Well, I mean, I can at least to start on just a general roadblock that we hit, which is setting expectations. I mean, this stuff isn't magic. It can feel like magic at times, but I think in our case, what we try to do is really get around a lot of, as you said, the hype right away and get down into what's practical about AI, right? You have to understand people and processes right away. Brett brought up estimation. I mean, that was really picking that process apart from by the time the RFP gets in to what they do and how they segment that RFP to how they assign vendors, et cetera. And we really had to like really go deep into that process to really understand stuff. But then the other part of it is it's like you have to understand like the data that you're dealing with as well in order to sort of really empower this stuff. So it's just really setting those expectations up front. And I think what you do there is then we start to build credibility because we're not saying, hey, this is going to solve all your problems like on day one. It's no, this is work. And these are the things that we need to do to kind of get over the hump together. This is the practical application of what we're trying to do in order to really solve the problem that we're looking for. But ultimately, like as long as everybody sort of understands what the upside is, and then where those friction points are going to exist as we sort of work through the process, I think you can get everybody on the same page.
And a few of the roadblocks for us, particularly, you've always got the human capacity side, and the concept of I'm too busy to do this to get less busy, and that was hard for our team to really be able to stop and say, how can we do this different? Because we're very much sure many industries are the same, but dirt on the boots contractors. I mean, we know how we did it because that's how the person in front of us taught us, and that's how the person in front of them taught them. And this is our process. And, you know, being able to start stripping that down, as again, back to one of our core values of continuous improvement, you got to humble yourself and take those pieces apart a few times. And we had teammates that walked into the room for the workshop and you could see it on their face. I don't want to be here. I'm going to be obstructive. I know how to do my job. I don't need these guys from Philly telling me, hey, there's a better way to do this. I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. I can tell them how to do it. And, we've all got those teammates. And sometimes I'm even that guy.
I
And
can be that guy.
yeah. So, sometimes you gotta take that pause and soak it in. And, then, that's the human side. And then our data side. Again, we're
Mm.
not a data scientist, we're a contractor. And I'll tell everyone, you don't need to be a data scientist to work in and around AI. But we figured out real quick our data was all over the place, different applications. And I think even since O3 partnered with us, we've implemented a new ERP software. That's a nightmare. And data has been moved 42 different places. So, you know, our problem was our data was very decentralized, and AI became our tool to help us centralize that without efforts of old where you had to reinvent your whole program. So those were really two big roadblocks that I saw for us right out of the gate.
In particular around detractors, because I think there's a real opportunity there for companies to realize kind of how we can sort of like evolve some of that attitude around this. AI again it's not magic, it's not going to change the world, but I think what you find is the more you can kind of get people starting to use it and understand it, sort of break down, I think the kind of initial concerns around what it means for my job, what it means for my future, and that we are really just here to make your day to day better. I think that's really where you can start to chip away at some of those concerns right up front. And I think that was the interesting thing with Buffalo was, they have innovation sort of baked into their culture. So there is, as Brett keeps talking about continuous improvement, you could tell that like while people might have been somewhat skeptical coming to the conversations initially, I think what we really found right away was that like they were easy to kind of get over the hump on this stuff once they saw the progress, once they were a part of the solution. And I think that's a really big part of how we kind of get over those humps with people kind of across the board with all of our clients is just making everybody sort of a part of the progress that we're trying to make with this and not really, feed into some of those concerns kind of right out of the gate.
Yeah. So tell us about what the outcomes were you saw. Tell us about the productivity shifts, or, what are the benefits that you determine were some of the best that came from your work together?
Probably one of the most rewarding moments, the two leaders of some of the concepts that we came up out of workshops, we assigned in-house leaders, partnered with O3 to work on these proof of concepts. And it within the first week, I had those teammates coming into the office just excited, just so empowered, saw all the opportunity, and the ability to start at the root of the problem also allows us to have immediate return. And seeing our team so excited and motivated by that, that was huge. That was some of the first gains for us. As we were looking at new projects, the ability to take and digest a project nearly from first receipt. Normally, we would be waiting 5, 6, 7 days really to get to the point of understanding where we could have intelligent conversation about our approach to the project. So that's being pulled forward 4, 5, 6 days. And that's really the exciting part. That's where, we as construction managers and contractors, we get to get in and do the work. The rest of it is just the dirty grind to get to that part. So those returns were so quick. And to see our team get excited about it was just, it lifted everything from productivity to morale.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll tack onto this as well, just from the standpoint of everything we do from an AI perspective, we measure through ROI, right? There's got to be some sort of both quantitative, qualitative metric. I mean, it's great to make people's days better, but fundamentally, if the investment isn't really worth the body of work, then we're not really thinking about this the right way. It's a big component of what we do up front is figure out, all right, what is the sort of core metric we're trying to change? And the one thing I'll say, particularly around the work with Buffalo, all of those metrics right out of the gate, went in the right direction. So if we're talking about estimation, the number of estimates that they're able to work through now is almost 2x based on what we're trying to produce, or will be eventually kind of at that point. The other part, though, isn't just the number of estimates. The bigger part, though, is also the quality of the work that you start to open up starts to become that much better. If you're not spending your time doing all of this tedious stuff, and estimation is fundamentally, it's very tedious. There's a lot of little fine points that you have to hit. Assuming you're kind of hitting that stuff in a much quicker way, then it opens up the opportunity to think more creatively about how you're approaching the problem, right? In Buffalo's case, it could be, the types of vendors they're bringing into the fold. It could be how they're sort of addressing a certain problem. And those are the scenarios where you begin to win business more, right? That to me is where you start to go from just saving time to really improving business.
We
yeah.
have a lot of cardinal knowledge with some of our very experienced estimators. And what we found is being able to help set these tools up with that cardinal knowledge, it let a lot of our newer teammates function as a much more experienced teammate much faster. When Mike says we're able to 2x the amount of estimates or the estimating work process that we're doing in any given week, that was immediately felt across the team. And we've watched our estimating turn rates go up, the conversion to awarded jobs are going up, the quality of the information given to our field to go build from is getting deeper. And one of the surprises from the tool is we were using it internally with estimating, but then giving some of the same resources to our field team. They're querying the projects for the same informations as well. So it was neat to watch how the web could expand very quickly.
It's funny. Listening to this conversation, I'm having flashbacks to like Keanu Reeves as Neo in the Matrix. He's like, download the Kung Fu program. And like suddenly he's like, I am Kung Fu. Like thinking about your younger estimators, right? Who was like, how do I tackle the RFP process in a way that I've never tackled it before? It's like, oh, well, we're going to use AI and you're going to learn twice as fast because we're not slogging through this stuff endlessly, right? Spending weeks and weeks on trying to get through an RFP. Now we can see all of the competition open up to us clearly and all of the opportunity open up to us clearly. We're learning 2x as fast too.
We are.
Yeah, I'm going to do
Yeah.
that. Come at me.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. That's actually, I think, one of the most interesting things that AI has really empowered is the sort of democratization of knowledge, right? And especially within organizations. I mean, we work with a lot of construction clients and in various other industries. And one thing you find is, you have like the one or two folks who are like, the subject matter experts because they've been doing it for 40 years and they understand the stuff inside and out. And that makes them incredibly valuable to the organization, but it also creates a little bit of a bottleneck when it comes to sort of training new people. It's hard to gain that knowledge very quickly. If you build tools or build patterns or build capacity within a company where AI can be that sort of, multiplier for sort of gaining that knowledge, I think your analogy is spot on. I say it all the time. Like I feel, especially like learning AI on a regular basis and the things we have to know. I feel like more than not, I just want to plug the information into my head and call it a day, but like that's really what you're seeing across the board now. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about how this work can be most impactful in organizations is really how do we share that information more readily and make it easier for especially new employees to absorb.
So,
Mike, it's
like,
like a pipeline. And, we talk a lot about workflow, and the general contracting and construction process is probably very similar to many other manufacturing processes where things are very sequential. And you're right, when we get anything that's tied up to one central bottleneck, it slows down efficiency. That's the maximum point of failure. And, we're seeing the ability to take this information and translate it across the entire workflow. And, I'm going to steal your words from the very beginning of the workflow to the very end of the workflow. And how do we tender that all the way across the way? And any contractor knows the steps through our construction cycle, particularly from estimating to project management and then project management to our field execution with both our teammates and our vendor partners. The ability to get that information running a full loop for this whole workflow, the more information you can circulate and the quicker you can do it, and the more people you can have attached to it, things just get much easier.
okay, so I'm going to ask you another question because I'm the storyteller out of the three of us here. So, how did, I love that you brought your team on board, Brett, right away. Talk to us about the story that you're telling to your clients now about how you work differently with them as a result of these tools that you're deploying and new processes that you're putting into place. What's the story you're telling about being an AI empowered buffalo, as opposed to just your run of the mill buffalo that likes to headbutt a tourist or two at Yosemite? Like,
I can tell buffalo roaming stories for days.
yikes.
So we've got
I
all
must
kinds
say,
of
I do
fun
not want to
buffalo
sit
facts.
next to you on a plane between the blueprints and that story. Is that okay?
a
Pop
lot
quiz
of
for your
buffalo
viewers.
points.
We should pop quiz the viewers for just how high a buffalo can jump. But hey, don't go ask Claude or OpenAI. So I
All
want to
right,
know what
just
people
tell us,
really
Brett,
think.
how high can a buffalo jump? How high?
6.5 feet.
Shut the front door. For
I
real?
know, isn't that surprising?
It's
So there's a lot of
surprising.
ways the herd
Okay,
can surprise you.
there you go.
That's like Kobe level jumping. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
How,
yeah. It's
so like,
it's a
what do you have
shocker.
to, you sneak up on a buffalo and scare them from behind? Like, what is happening to that buffalo?
Yeah, exactly. There's something happened there. The way we put our abilities forward with our client partners, again, are that we're a solutions provider. That we are going to deal with often, the unpredictable side of construction. We have to bring efficiency to complex problems, and very much like our framer, has a hammer and nails. We're using a technology tool set to apply to the same construction challenges that we've seen for years. I often imagine it might be like going to a great grandfather and saying, "Hey, I don't want you to use a hammer any longer. I want you to use this Pasload framing nailer, or I want you to now use this battery operated Milwaukee nailer." It's an innovation and an evolution of the things that we've always done.
Mm.
So what does AI allow us to do? It allows us to plan a little easier and faster and more inclusively. It allows us to make sure that our systems and processes that I believe make us so successful, like the herd build cycle, when we apply AI and workflow and automation technology to that, it guarantees that all of our teammates, client partners, vendor partners are all following the herd build cycle in the right way at all times with the guardrails right beside us. The meetings run quicker, they're analyzed, the feedback loop that comes back into the system is running constantly. So it almost allows us to put nice little bumpers on our process and use AI to help us do that. So it just allows us to be a better version of ourselves. So it's like, hey, how does Buffalo look different? No, we're still big and hairy and we jump 6 feet. However, we're just a little quicker and more agile than the rest of our competitors because of what we're using. AI is not going to be replacing construction, but it's the cliche. Construction managers and general contractors like Buffalo who are enabled with AI, we're going to be a little more effective, a little more intelligent about what we're doing. We're going to be able to deliver Buffalo ready and on time much more predictably than anyone else. And when we come all the way to those root problems and start solving them from there, we found great success.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can jump 7 feet now instead of 6 feet. So they're
We're working
definitely,
out.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's like you got a basketball team full of Sasquatches over there. So give us a little advice, to other companies that are listening out there. What do you think, given what you've learned from this process, what's your advice to other companies that are starting the AI process right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, I mean, it's the same thing we work with every client on, which is, start small, iterate, expand from there, right? Find the problems that are the low-hanging fruit and the areas where you can make meaningful impact kind of right away, and then you sort of develop from there. I think our approach has always been, we're trying to think end to end. We are trying to think about how do we impact an entire business, but you cannot go in with the attitude of like, I'm going to solve this problem from end to end. You have to solve the smaller problems first, find out where there is a connecting thread, and then sort of develop them from there. There's two things this does. One, it's practical and they can actually get work done and actually see meaningful results as we do sort of across the board, as we've done with Buffalo and many others. But I think the other part of it too is it makes the AI agenda far less challenging, far less scary, far less. It looks like a much shorter mountain to climb, if you will, in order to kind of get through the work. So that idea of sort of starting with those smaller projects, really looking towards areas where are gonna like everybody's living this not like whatever the challenge is on a day-to-day basis and really solve that. That's where you're really gonna find the most leverage. And something else to add to that, we talked about detractors earlier. The one thing I will say about Buffalo, which has made them just a tremendous client for us, is there is an innovation adoption mentality across the board at Buffalo. I'm not saying this is the case across all of our clients, and frankly, there are several folks we've worked with in the past where you've had a lot of detractors, people who are generally skeptics coming to the table. That's fine, and we'll generally, that's a part of the puzzle. But the more you can put your early adopters in places to really help to make this succeed, the better off you're going to be. And in Buffalo's case, it wasn't hard because I would have to say the vast majority of people we've dealt with there have been very excited about this and wanted to hop on board. So kudos to Brett, kudos to the team over there for creating a culture where that's the case. But like to me, that's really where you can begin to really solve a lot of these problems quickly is when people have the right attitude and they're more solutions oriented, kind of going into the mix.
Yeah, which is, follows the premise of doing innovation work anywhere, which is small pilots, small wins, get people on board, find the converts, right? This is the path of any
Yep,
prophet who is
100%.
leading a path into uncharted territory is small wins, convince them, just turn water into wine, you'll be fine. So this has been a fantastic discussion. I'm going to ask you both the questions that I ask everyone who comes on the show. And that is number one, what is the greatest innovation of all time? And Brett, maybe I'll ask you first.
Sure, gosh. I'm glad you started with me so I can cheat and grab the lowest hanging fruit. But I think for me, it's probably fire. Not
Mm,
because fire in itself, but it's like it has been iterated exponentially. And I'm a big space geek. So it's like we started with fire 400,000 years ago, and today we're planning Mars travel.
Yeah.
Right.
Simply because the way we evolved that into anything from transportation to airlines to rocket ships to now we've got a plausible theory of traveling to Mars. All, you know, all from that, I don't know, first lightning strike.
Yeah.
That's great. I love
And
that.
I think it's also because we know that raw buffalo is not as good as buffalo over fire.
No, nobody's eating my herd. You got to catch us first.
Mike, what about you? What is the greatest innovation of all time?
I thought long and hard about this. And I think this ties to the world we're living in AI right now. But I would say the printing press. I think when you think about the collection of knowledge and you thinking about how we share information with one another, the ability to, as we discussed before, so quickly and so readily get to information to help educate yourself and learn quickly, to me that was first empowered by the printing press, right? When we started having books and could hand those books to people and people could learn to read and then learn to write and then share ideas, like that's really a very important moment in time that has really pushed humanity past, so many things. It's came slightly after fire, but definitely is an important part of that. I see the world of AI right now. I know there's a lot of people out there who worry, and frankly, as someone who works in it all day, I have my own concerns, especially how we're regulating it and all those sorts of things. But as an optimist, as somebody who sits there and looks at the world and what we're capable of, in a positive way, the idea that anybody with a ChatGPT account can learn anything is remarkable. It's just remarkable. Like, I mean, you think about how much we segregated information from people for so many years, and how only the wealthy even would have access to, the best education or the best information. Like now it's so democratized, it's crazy. And to me, that's really where that started with, right? Let's print some books and let's see where we go from there.
Yeah. Um, if you could join any innovation team in human history, which team would you join?
I don't know, Brett, you got one for this?
Gosh, you know, for me, I would probably join the Steve Jobs team.
Hmm.
Just the rate at
Apple
which
one.
they did that, and just I'm attracted to a story that starts in a garage.
Yep. I
You
love it.
know, if you're talking about innovation, I mean, I think the example of anyone starting out of their garage is so inspiring versus, hey, I got to start here with some big science lab and some big technology and all this money. It's like this can be done out of your garage. So everyone's garage is going to be a little different, and I just challenge everybody to find that first spark.
The two Neds in a shed theory. Got
It
it.
is.
Love it.
You know, two Stacy's probably started off in a much better cafe, by the way. I don't know that the garage would be my starting point.
Hey, you can have a she
Stacy
shed. It's okay.
Stacy and Tracy are finding a much better location, but I agree. Mike, what do you think?
So I'm kind of a space nerd, and the Apollo missions were always my favorite. I still think to this day, and actually it's been really awesome seeing the Artemis mission and sort of following along there, just because it's so nice that we're back doing that. The world needs it. I mean, apologies, I forget the guy who was on the mission who made this statement, but basically saying, when you look back at the Earth and you just see the Earth, you start to realize how small we are and how we're all just one planet, right? And I think that's what the Apollo missions did, is it really helped to let us realize how big the universe is and how far we've come. I mean, and the fact that we went from not 60 some odd years prior to that, barely having industry in this country in the world, and then we're landing people on the moon. Like that's insane to me. Like if you really think about the math and all that. And what the crazier thing to me is, especially when you watch some of those like old footage and whatnot, and you see these guys having to do math on the fly with pencils in space.
Right.
And like, I don't know, I'm gonna carry the one and then I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna figure that out. They didn't have AI, right? They,
They
some
had
computers, but
black
they had
women
to figure
at
that
NASA.
out.
Yeah, they had black women at NASA whose job title was computer. Computer.
But that's the most insane thing to me. And I try to tell my kids now, like, I was like, I don't think you understand how much like capacity you have like at your fingertips right now. And like, it was literally like, solve that math problem or potentially die, right? Like that's really what it came down to. So anyways, just a remarkable group of individuals to really make any of that work, never mind actually landing on the moon.
I know, to think about it, my mom grew up in a town where one person had a horse and carriage, and she was responsible for churning the butter in her home. My mom's 98, and they're like, we're going back to the moon. Yeah, it's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
Yep.
And lastly, what is the story that the world needs now?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm telling my kids right now, which I think is an important thing, especially I have a junior in high school who's on the sort of cusp of college, and then my daughter is just starting high school next year. And I think this ties back to the AI story on the whole, which is we are now in a world where learning isn't a nice to have, it's a need to have. Where, I sort of made this claim last year when sort of speaking at a conference and talking about, the companies that are really going to thrive are the ones that learn the fastest, the ones that, set up a world where, we expect failure to a certain degree because that is the quickest way to understand the right way or a better way to do something. To me, that narrative of understanding that you don't have time to, be petty about, things like really this is all about how quickly can we understand, learn, solve problems and continue to grow. That's the story. And it's funny, I told my kids this as well. Like they're like used to be like you'd have a job for like 25, 30, 40 years and like people would just do the same things over and over again for the like we're like I don't like I mean you could be doing I guess the same sort of job, but the manner in which you do that job was going to change every 18 months to 2 years, right? Like we're growing and we're evolving that fast. So I don't know that they're going to have the luxury of kind of, sitting back and just saying, yep, this is what I'm going to do. And this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So I do think that's an important part of this.
Yeah. What
I think
about you, Brett?
that's a great message. I've got young girls at home too, and I want them to hear the same things. And I think for me, the message the world needs, or the change the world needs, is just really a return to community and
Mm,
relationship with each other. And for me, in business, I'll frame that as connection equals productivity, connection equals production. And I may tune that a little at home with the girls, and really say, don't isolate, find the one. And if everyone is finding the one, we can find the many. And
mm,
that is to empower each other through love and knowledge and community together. I think it would be easy to say that behind AI, we're all going to become these isolationists behind, a Claude code or a terminal screen. And no, that's not where the highest, best use of all of our time and productivity is going to be. So use tools like this to come together and again, just lift up our communities together, whether you're doing that personally or in business. And I don't think we always have to separate the two.
Hmm. This has just been a fantastic conversation today. Thank you so much for sharing your AI journey with us. If people want to get in touch, Mike, how can they best do that with O3?
Well, we have three web addresses, but I'll just give you the one. O3XO.ai is our AI practice. I'd also say anybody who's looking at the conference at 1682conference.com and go check us out there for that. I mean, I think those are probably the two best avenues.
Great. And Brett, what about you?
Excellent. Well, first, you'll find us at the O3XO conference as well. So I'll put a plug in for that.
Nice.
Great.
But we're buffaloconstruction.com, and you'll find us at the same Buffalo Construction on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you'll learn all kinds of fun Buffalo facts.
That's right. And
I will
apparently,
say,
what I've learned from this conversation is that way to eat an AI buffalo is really just one bite at a time, maybe one.
I love
Guys,
it.
so joining me on the show today. It was a real pleasure. Thank you.
See
thank you,
you, Mike.
Susan.